Saving a life shouldn't be a death sentence, but in Clifton, harboring an Apache child might as well be. Caleb Thorne knew it the moment he saw the boy clinging to his mother's lifeless skirt. The mob's bloodlust, a tangible thing in the dust-choked air. The metallic clang of Caleb's shovel against rock faded as he scooped up the boy, no older than 6. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the rising crescendo of shouts. Apache, murderer. The words were stones, hurled with deadly accuracy. He tucked the child behind him in his shack, a flimsy barrier against the storm. He only had hours. 60 miles to Fort Thomas. Deliver the child to the army before the vigilantes, fueled by whiskey and vengeance, decided justice demanded a hanging. By dawn. Could he even make it? The creaking leather of his saddlebag seemed to mock him, a slow, mournful groan. He glanced at the boy huddled in the corner, dark eyes, wide with a fear that mirrored his own. What did he know of this child? Nothing. Except he was innocent. He knelt, offering a piece of hardtack. The boy hesitated, then took it, his small fingers brushing Caleb's calloused hand. "Thank you, mister," he whispered, his English perfect. Too perfect. The twist of a knife. Caleb stared. "Who taught you that? What if mercy ruins justice?" "Prospector," the boy mumbled around a mouthful of biscuit. "Mr. Smith. He gone now." Smith. Caleb knew a half-dozen Smiths in the territory. All prospectors. All disappeared in the last year. The river whispers secrets, but the desert keeps them. The shouts outside grew louder, closer. Boots scuffed against the parched earth. "Thorne!" "We know he's in there." Sheriff Grady Meeks' voice, thick with false authority, cut through the air. What if justice kills hope? Caleb felt the sweat gather at his brow. Grady, die. A man he'd shared a beer with, a man who'd sworn to uphold the law. But the law was a fragile thing in Clifton, easily bent by the prevailing wind. He had a choice. A terrible choice. Hand the boy over, trust in Grady's promise of a fair trial, knowing full well the outcome was already decided. Or break the law himself, become an outlaw, and run. Either way, blood would spill. The air grows thick with anticipation. He felt it in the silence between the shouts, the pregnant pause before the storm broke. He looked at the boy, his face streaked with dust and fear. He looked at the door, barely strong enough to keep out a determined dog. "Boy," he said, his voice rough. "What's your name?" "Naiche," the boy whispered. "Mr. Smith, he called me Charlie." Charlie, Dut. An Apache boy who spoke English, who knew a dead man. A dead man who'd taught him white man's ways. More questions than answers, and no time to find them. What if justice kills hope? He grabbed his rifle, the cold steel a comfort in his trembling hands. "Come on, Charlie. We're leaving." He pushed open the door. Grady stood there, flanked by a dozen men, their faces grim. The setting sun bled red across the landscape, painting the scene in hues of violence. "Thorne," Grady said, his voice low. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Hand him over. What if justice kills hope?" Caleb leveled his rifle. "I ain't handing him over to no lynch mob, Grady." The silence screams louder than gunfire. A tense standoff. Caleb knew he couldn't win a shootout. Not against that many. But he could buy Charlie some time. "You're making a mistake, Caleb," Grady warned, his hand hovering over his gun. What will it cost him now? Maybe I am, Caleb replied. But I ain't living with the blood of an innocent child on my hands. He fired a shot into the air. The sound echoed through the town, a challenge, a declaration. He grabbed Charlie's hand and ran, towards the horses, towards the desert, towards the unknown. They mounted, Caleb hoisting Charlie up in front of him. The creaking leather of the saddle was deafening. He kicked his horse, urging it into a gallop, away from Clifton, away from the mob. Behind them, he could hear the shouts, the pounding of hooves. They were coming. 60 miles. He had to reach Fort Thomas by dawn. Could he outrun them? Could he protect Charlie? The distant howl of coyotes joined the cacophony, a mournful serenade to their flight. He glanced at Charlie, the boy's small body pressed against his. What will it cost him now? Hold on tight, Charlie, he said. It's going to be a long night. He pushed his horse harder, the wind whipping at his face. The desert stretched before them, a vast and unforgiving landscape. He felt a pang of regret. He was leaving behind his claim, the years of hard work he'd poured into the land. He was leaving behind his reputation, the respect he'd earned in Clifton. But he couldn't leave Charlie who pays if he chooses wrong. He rode for hours, the moon, a silent witness to their escape. The pursuit had thinned, but he knew they wouldn't give up. Not easily. As the hours passed, Charlie began to hum softly, a strange, haunting melody. Caleb recognized it after a moment, a popular tune, something the ladies sang at the saloon. Where did he learn that? He looked down at the boy, his face pale in the moonlight. Something wasn't right. What if mercy ruins justice? He pulled his horse to a stop, the sudden silence jarring. Charlie, he said gently, are you hurt? The boy shook his head, but Caleb saw the tears welling in his eyes. What is it, son? Is the price worth the trail ahead? Charlie sniffled. They burned Mr. Smith's cabin, he whispered. They didn't find nothing. Caleb's blood ran cold. What was he looking for, Charlie? What did Mr. Smith want? The boy hesitated, then pointed towards the mountains. Gold, he said. He say, big gold. In the sacred place. Gold. The motive. The reason Smith was dead. The reason the Apache were being pushed off their land. The reason Charlie was now a hunted fugitive. But the boy was still humming under his breath, the white man's tune repeating in the night. Caleb had to protect him, yes. But how much more dangerous had the boy just become? He had to reach Fort Thomas, yes. But he had a new, terrifying question. Would the army even want him? The silence screams louder than gunfire. Caleb gripped the reins tighter, the creaking leather of saddlebags a counterpoint to the rhythmic thud of the horse's hooves on the dusty trail. He glanced back at the boy, clinging to him, small hands digging into Caleb's worn leather vest. 60 miles. He had maybe 12 hours of daylight left. The sun bleeds red on the horizon, painting the rugged landscape in hues of fire and blood. Caleb urged the horse faster, the animal responding with a snort and a surge forward. He needed to put as much distance as possible between them and Clifton before nightfall. He knew Meeks. The sheriff wouldn't give up easily. Not with the town whipped into a frenzy. The boy, whose name Caleb had learned was Thomas, hummed softly. It was a tune Caleb recognized. Oh, Susanna. The child's soft humming of a white man's tune was eerie in this desolate place. Where had a young Apache learned such a song? And how much did he truly understand of the world beyond the canyon walls? Caleb's throat felt like sandpaper. He hadn't dared to stop for water, fear pushing him onward. He needed to find a spring, a creek, anything. He spurred the horse again, scanning the landscape for any sign of water. He spotted a cluster of cottonwoods in the distance, a telltale sign of water. Hope surged through him, a fragile blossom in the desert of his fear. He veered towards the trees, the horse quickening its pace. As they approached, he heard it, the faint, welcome gurgle of a stream. What will it cost him now? But as they drew closer, he saw something else, tracks. Fresh tracks. Horses. More than one. Heading the same way he was. Had Meeks already sent out a posse? Could he outrun them, or was he walking the child into a trap? He dismounted, pulling Thomas down with him. "Stay close," he murmured, his hand resting on the boy's shoulder. He led the horse towards the stream, keeping a wary eye on the surrounding terrain. The air grows thick with anticipation. What will it cost him now? The stream was narrow, but the water was clear and cold. He let the horse drink its fill, then cupped his hands and drank deeply, the water washing away the dust and fear. Thomas watched him, his dark eyes wide and unblinking. "Drink, son," Caleb said, gesturing to the stream. Thomas hesitated, then knelt and drank, his small hands splashing in the water. As Thomas drank, Caleb studied the tracks. They were heading east, towards Fort Thomas. Meeks must think he was heading straight for the fort. He was right, of course. But Caleb didn't have to make it easy for him. Can he reach it before the light dies? He could try to double back, lose them in the maze of canyons and mesas. But that would take time he didn't have. And it would expose Thomas to the elements, to the dangers of the desert. Or he could push on, try to outrun them. But if they caught him, Thomas would be at their mercy. A mercy Caleb knew wouldn't be given. What was the harder path? And which one gave Thomas the best chance? He stood, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. "We need to move," he said, his voice low and urgent. He hoisted Thomas back onto the horse, then mounted behind him. "Hold on tight." He urged the horse back onto the trail, but instead of continuing east, he turned south, towards the rugged, unforgiving mountains. The trail narrowed, becoming steeper and rockier. The horse labored, its hooves slipping on the loose stones. He knew this terrain. He prospected these mountains for years, searching for silver and gold. He knew the hidden canyons, the secret passes, the places where a man could disappear. What if justice kills hope? The metallic clang of shovel against rock echoed in his memory, a ghost of a life he might never return to. As they climbed higher, the air grew cooler, the sun beginning to dip behind the peaks. He needed to find shelter soon, a place to spend the night. He scanned the landscape, searching for a cave, an overhang, anything that would offer protection from the cold and the eyes of his pursuers. He found a small cave tucked away behind a cluster of boulders. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He dismounted, helping Thomas down. He led the horse into the cave, then gathered some dry wood for a fire. What if mercy ruins justice? As he built the fire, Thomas watched him, his expression unreadable. Caleb wondered what the boy was thinking, what he was feeling. He had been torn from his home, his family, his life. He was alone, in a strange land, with a man he barely knew. He lit the fire, the flames crackling and casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. The warmth was welcome, chasing away the chill of the mountains. He pulled out some dried meat and offered it to Thomas. Eat, he said, gesturing to the meat. Tomas hesitated, then took a piece, and began to chew slowly. What if justice kills hope? As they ate, Caleb listened. The distant howl of coyotes filled the night, a mournful sound that echoed through the canyons. He strained his ears, listening for any other sound, any sign that they were being followed. The silence screams louder than gunfire. He needed a plan. He couldn't just keep running. He needed to figure out how to get Thomas to Fort Thomas safely, without getting caught. Who pays if he chooses wrong? But how? He was just one man, against the entire town of Clifton. And Sheriff Meeks wouldn't hesitate to use any means necessary to get his hands on the boy. What if he tried to send a message to Fort Thomas? But who could he trust? And how could he get a message through without being intercepted? The river whispers secrets, but the mountains hold their tongues. Who pays if he chooses wrong? He looked at Tomas, huddled near the fire, his eyes closed. The boy was exhausted, but he couldn't let his guard down. Not for a moment. He knew that saving Thomas meant risking everything. His life, his reputation, his future. But he couldn't turn his back on the boy. He couldn't let him fall into the hands of the vigilantes. But was he truly saving Tomas? Or was he just prolonging the inevitable? Was he leading him down a path that would only end in more pain and suffering? He knew one thing for sure: he wouldn't give up. He would fight for Tomas with every breath in his body, even if it meant becoming an outlaw, forever hunted by the town he once called home. But could he truly protect Tomas? And what would it cost him, in the end? The sun bled red, fire licking the canyon walls as Caleb urged Betsy onward. The child, clinging to his back, felt lighter than sin against the growing weight of Caleb's conscience. 60 miles to Fort Thomas. Each one a year. Shovel against rock, the metallic clang echoing. No longer honest labor, but the gaping hole this boy was digging in his life. He risked everything. Worth it? The boy shifted, small hands tightening. Are they still coming, Mr. Thorne? The child's soft humming, a mournful clementine, his only company these past hours. Unsettling, this small Apache speaking like a schoolteacher who pays if he chooses wrong? Maybe, Caleb answered, dust thick in his throat. We will be there soon enough. Hold tight. Water. Betsy flagged, a stubborn shuffle now her pace. Since noon they'd pushed, but the desert was relentless. He scanned for green, for promise. The air hung heavy, thick with dread. Would Sheriff Meeks let it go? Or would the bloodlust and prejudice drive them on? If they caught him, what would they do to the boy? The river whispered secrets. Not a river, just a dry wash, but water sometimes lingered. He dismounted, the saddlebags creaking, and dug with his hands, the sand cutting. Here, boy, he said, handing over the canteen. Sip, Pawdai. Don't waste it. The boy drank sparingly, then offered it back. Caleb took a long pull, lukewarm and gritty, but salvation. Betsy drank from his hat, affection mixed with worry. Good mule, loyal and strong. But even she had limits. What if mercy ruins justice? The setting sun. Nightfall meant cooler temperatures, but darkness too, a cloak for them and their pursuers. He needed a defensible position, rest and watch. How long before Meeks realized he'd doubled back? He knew this land too, and he had more men. He led Betsy and the boy into a narrow canyon, walls offering some protection. A small cave, just enough to huddle in. A small fire, shadows dancing on the rock. Coyotes howled in the distance. A mournful serenade. Is the price worth the trail ahead? "What's your name, son?" Caleb asked, breaking the silence. He didn't even know. The boy looked up, dark eyes reflecting firelight. "I am called Little Hawk. But Mr. Abernathy," he called me Thomas. Abernathy. Yet Abernathy, the missing prospector Thorne. Rich and gone. Or Apache raids. "Abernathy taught you to speak English?" Little Hawk nodded. "He was a good man. He read to me from books. He said I should learn the white man's ways." Caleb stared, unease settling. This changed everything. Not just an Apache child, something more. What if mercy ruins justice? What happened to Abernathy? Dead? Did the Apache? Did the boy know something? He'd planned to drop him at Fort Thomas, disappear back into the hills. Now he needed answers. Answers before the fort. He banked the fire, embers glowing. The silence screamed. He needed sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. Responsibility now, not just to the boy, but to the truth. He pulled his rifle close, cold steel a comfort. He'd face Meeks, the desert, but not blind. He'd find out about Jed Abernathy, even if it killed him. What if mercy ruins justice? First light, pale gray. Caleb woke tense. He checked the cave mouth, scanned the terrain. Nothing. But they were out there. He ate jerky, sharing with Little Hawk. Betsy munched dry grass, ribs showing. Fort Thomas. Soon. Answers first. Bye. He checked his rifle. Smooth action, loaded chamber. 6 bullets. Against a posse, can he reach it before the light dies? Could he protect this child? Strong enough? Or just delaying the inevitable? He saddled Betsy, quick and efficient. He wouldn't surrender. He wouldn't give up. He'd fight to the last bullet. "Ready, boy?" he asked. "Low, is the price worth the trail ahead?" Little Hawk nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Ready, mister?" Thorne. They rode out of the canyon, into the rising sun, 2 figures silhouetted against the vast expanse of the Arizona territory. The journey had just begun. If he made it to Fort Thomas, would the army even believe him? Or would they see him as just another troublemaker, harboring a savage child? The silence screamed louder than gunfire as Caleb urged his weary horse onward, the small Apache boy, perhaps 7 years old, clinging to his back. 60 miles to Fort Thomas. 60 miles and a lifetime away from the life he knew. The sun bleeds red, painting the canyons in shades of blood orange as they descended into the Gila River Valley. He risked a glance behind, half expecting to see Sheriff Meeks and his posse cresting the ridge. Nothing yet, but the air grows thick with anticipation. He kicked his horse, urging it into a trot. Every jolt sent a tremor through the boy, who tightened his grip. "Easy, little one," Caleb murmured, feeling the warmth of the child's breath on his neck. "We'll be there soon enough." But his soon enough felt like a cruel joke. Soon enough, the vigilantes would be upon them. Soon enough, he'd be a fugitive, his name whispered with disdain in every saloon from here to Tombstone. Was it worth it? This wasn't his fight. He was a miner, not some damn hero. but the boy's soft humming of a white man's tune, a melody Caleb recognized as "Oh." Susanna gnawed at him. How had an Apache child learned that song? The river whispers secrets as they reached the water's edge. The horse, grateful for the respite, drank deeply. Caleb dismounted, stretching his aching muscles. He needed to check the boy, make sure he was holding up. "You hungry?" he asked, rummaging through his saddlebags. He pulled out a piece of dried jerky and offered it to the boy. The child took it hesitantly, his dark eyes studying Caleb with an unnerving intensity. Who pays if he chooses wrong? "Thank you," the boy said, his voice small but clear. Caleb froze. The boy spoke English. Fluent English, Kinohoden English. The twist seed had taken root. "Where did you learn to speak like that?" The boy chewed slowly, swallowing before answering. "Mr. Abernathy taught me. He was a prospector. He disappeared. What if justice kills hope?" Disappeared. The same Mr. Abernathy who had staked a claim just north of Clifton, the one everyone assumed had just packed up and left when his luck ran dry. Now a chill ran down Caleb's spine. Had Abernathy been murdered? And if so, did this child witness it? He needed to get to Fort Thomas, and fast. Not just to save the boy from a lynching, but to uncover the truth about Abernathy's disappearance. But could he trust the army to protect the boy, or would they just see him as another savage to be tamed? The sun had dipped below the horizon, plunging the valley into a twilight gloom. The metallic clang of shovel against rock echoed in his mind, the sound of his old life, now a distant memory. He mounted his horse, lifting the boy in front of him. Can he reach it before the light dies? "Hold on tight," he said, his voice grim. "It's going to be a long night." They rode for hours, guided by the pale light of the moon. The creaking leather of saddlebags became a constant companion, a rhythm against the vast, unforgiving landscape. Caleb scanned the horizon constantly, his hand ever far from his rifle. The distant howl of coyotes sent shivers down his spine, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. As the hours wore on, doubt gnawed at him. He was putting everything on the line for a child he barely knew. A child who might be carrying secrets that could get them both killed. What if Sheriff Meeks was right? What if this boy was a threat, a savage who deserved to be brought to justice? No, he couldn't think like that. He had looked into those dark eyes, seen the fear and the innocence. He couldn't abandon him. But the moral price of victory was becoming clearer with every mile. He was becoming an outlaw, a pariah. Around midnight, they stopped to rest. Caleb found a small cave, just big enough to provide some shelter from the wind. He built a small fire, careful to keep the flames low. The boy huddled close, shivering despite the warmth. "Tell me about Mr. Abernathy," Caleb said, his voice gentle. "What happened to him?" The boy hesitated, his eyes darting nervously around the cave. He found something," he whispered. "Something shiny. Then the men came." "What men?" "I don't know. They wore masks. Who pays if he chooses wrong?" "Masks?" That didn't sound like a band of Apaches. It sounded like a conspiracy. A conspiracy that reached beyond Clifton, perhaps. What had Abernathy found? Gold? Silver? Something more valuable? The air grows thick with anticipation. He had stumbled into something far bigger than he imagined. And he was running out of time. Only 40 miles left, but first light was only a few hours away. If Meeks hadn't found them yet, he would at first light. What will it cost him now? What would Caleb do if he didn't make it to Fort Thomas by morning? Would he risk a shootout with the vigilantes, or would he try to hide, hoping they would pass him by? And if he did manage to escape, where would he go? He couldn't go back to Clifton. He was a wanted man now. The silence screams louder than gunfire, punctuated only by the crackling of the fire and the distant howl of a coyote. Caleb knew one thing for certain: his life had changed forever. And all because he couldn't turn his back on a little boy with a white man's tune stuck in his head. The silence screams louder than gunfire as Caleb weighs his choices, the boy's small hand gripping his own like a lifeline. Grady Meeks stands before him, a granite statue of righteous anger, the setting sun painting long shadows that stretch and distort reality. A fair trial, he drawls, venom chilling Caleb to the bone. He glances down at the boy, dark eyes reflecting the dying light, and hears the distant howl of coyotes. The air thickens. Could he deliver the boy, trusting a system that's already failed so many? The metallic clang of shovel against rock echoes, a reminder of his hard-won stake, the life built in this unforgiving land. To surrender the child is to surrender his soul, to become complicit in barbarity. But to defy the sheriff, to forfeit everything. Caleb makes his choice. Who pays if he chooses wrong? "Get out of my way, Grady," he says, voice low and steady, saddlebags creaking against the sheriff's heavy breathing. "I'm taking the boy to Fort Thomas." Grady Meeks spits on the ground, sharp and ugly. "You're making a mistake, Caleb. A big one." He gestures to the growing crowd, grim and expectant. "These folks won't forget this." Caleb knows he's right. He's burning bridges. Forfeiting the ranch, too, if it comes to it. The boy's life hangs in the balance, a weight heavier than any reputation. He spurs his horse, the animal lunging forward, bursting through the crowd, scattering men and horses. Behind them, a roar of outrage erupts, chasing them into the gathering darkness. Who pays if he chooses wrong? They ride hard, miles blurring into scrub and shadow. The sun bleeds red, staining the horizon with blood. Caleb glances back, seeing the faint flicker of torches. They're being pursued. How long before they catch him? The boy, Dakota, sits silently behind him, small body pressed close. The child's soft humming of a white man's tune is a haunting melody. Caleb is surprised to hear the tune. "Where did you learn that song, Dakota?" "Mr. Abernathy taught me," the boy replies, voice clear and articulate. "He sang it all the time." Abernathy. A faded newspaper clipping. A prospector disappeared months ago in the Superstition Mountains. Could this be the same man? What happened to him? Caleb pushes the thought aside, focusing on the immediate danger. They need distance before nightfall. The river whispers, secrets as they approach. Water, a ribbon of silver. He knows a ford, a treacherous crossing to slow their pursuers if they dare. He urges his horse into the water, current strong and swift, tugging at their legs. The boy clings to him, small arms tight around his waist. Halfway across, the horse stumbles, nearly losing its footing. Panic floods Caleb's veins. If they go down here, they're finished. He fights to regain control, muscles straining, water icy against his skin. Finally, the horse finds solid ground, and they scramble onto the opposite bank, soaked and shivering. Are they safe now, or have they only bought themselves a few more hours? They press on, landscape rugged, air cold. Caleb finds a small cave, a shallow indentation offering some protection. He starts a small fire, flames dancing and casting flickering shadows. Dakota huddles close, eyes wide and watchful. He's brave, Caleb thinks, but still just a child. He needs food, rest, safety. And Caleb has promised to provide it, no matter the cost. He pulls out dried meat and hardtack. Dakota eats in silence, gaze fixed on the flames. Tell me about Mr. Abernathy, Caleb says, breaking the silence. What was he like? Dakota hesitates, then begins to speak, voice soft but steady. He describes a kind, gentle man who taught him to read and write, who shared his stories and his dreams. A life lived in harmony with the land, a life brutally cut short. What if mercy ruins justice? According to Dakota, Abernathy was searching for a lost mine, a legendary source of gold. He believed he was close to finding it, but then he disappeared without a trace. Is this just a child's fantasy, or is there truth to his words? Caleb listens intently, piecing together the fragments. He knows the legends of the Superstition Mountains, tales of hidden riches and deadly traps. He's always dismissed them as folklore, but now, listening to Dakota's account, he begins to wonder, what if justice kills hope? Could Abernathy have actually found the lost mine? Is that what led to his disappearance? The questions swirl, adding another layer to their perilous situation. He glances at Dakota, who has fallen asleep, small face peaceful in the firelight. He's made a promise to protect this child, and he intends to keep it, even if it means facing down a town full of angry men, a treacherous wilderness, and the secrets of a lost mine. He settles in for the night, hand resting on the butt of his rifle, the distant howl of coyotes, a constant reminder. He knows the vigilantes will be on their trail at first light, and he needs to be ready who pays if he chooses wrong. How can he possibly outrun them, protect Dakota, and unravel the mystery of Abernathy's disappearance, all while navigating the unforgiving terrain of the Arizona Territory? The first rays of dawn paint the sky with streaks of orange and gold. The air grows thick with anticipation. Caleb wakes Dakota, and they eat a quick breakfast. The river whispers secrets as he leads his horse out of the cave. He knows that their journey is far from over. They have about 50 miles to go. He saddles up, movements efficient and practiced. He knows the land ahead is rugged, unforgiving, and full of hidden dangers. But he also knows that he has no other choice. He has to reach Fort Thomas, and he has to protect Dakota, no matter the cost. As they ride, Caleb notices something different in Dakota. The boy seems more alert, more focused. He scans the horizon, his eyes sharp and observant. This way, Dakota says, pointing to a narrow trail that leads into the mountains. Mr. Abernathy showed me a shortcut. Caleb hesitates. He doesn't know if he can trust the boy's memory. But he also knows that they can't afford to waste any time. He decides to take the chance. Can he reach it before the light dies? Following Dakota's lead, they turn onto the trail, plunging deeper into the heart of the Superstition Mountains. The silence screams louder than gunfire as they ride. Caleb can feel the eyes of the mountains watching them. Is this a shortcut to safety, or a path to certain doom? Saving a life shouldn't be a death sentence, but in Clifton, harboring an Apache child might as well be. The sun bled red, painting the canyon walls in hues of fire and blood as Caleb urged his horse, a sturdy Appaloosa named Dusty, onward. 60 miles to Fort Thomas. 60 miles, and every creak of the saddlebags, every distant howl of coyotes echoing off the cliffs, was a hammer blow against his dwindling hope. The boy, no older than 7, clung to Caleb's back, his small hands gripping the worn fabric of Caleb's coat. "You speak English good," Caleb said, glancing back. "Prospector teach you?" The boy nodded, his dark eyes, pools of ancient wisdom, fixed on the horizon. "Mr. Abernathy. He gone now." "Gone how?" Caleb wondered. "Lost. Or something worse." The metallic clang of shovel against rock, a sound Caleb knew intimately from his own prospecting days, echoed in his memory, overlaid with a growing unease. It wasn't just the vigilantes he had to worry about. He needed to get this boy to safety, to someone who could understand what he knew. He urged Dusty faster. What will it cost him now? The air grew thick with anticipation as dusk settled. The trail narrowed, winding precariously along the edge of a steep drop. Below, the San Francisco River whispered secrets to the gathering darkness. Caleb could almost taste the fear rising in the boy, a palpable thing that tightened his own gut. "Hold tight," Caleb said, his voice a low rumble. "Almost to a safer spot." He knew a small cave, hidden behind a curtain of scrub oak, about 5 miles ahead. A place to rest, to water Dusty, to assess their supplies. He patted the rifle strapped to his saddle. One rifle against a posse? The odds were stacked against him, but he'd faced worse. Had he, though? Had he ever stared down the barrel of losing everything, his life, his reputation, for the sake of a child he barely knew? The silence screams louder than gunfire. The moon, a sliver of bone in the inky sky, offered little comfort. They reached the cave just as the last vestiges of light faded. Caleb dismounted, his joints protesting with every movement. He helped the boy down, his small frame stiff with exhaustion. Dusty, grateful for the respite, drank deeply from the small stream that trickled near the cave entrance. Caleb pulled out a strip of jerky and some hardtack, offering it to the boy. He ate in silence, his eyes never leaving Caleb's face. What if mercy ruins justice? What was Mr. Abernathy looking for? Caleb asked, breaking the stillness. The boy hesitated, then whispered, "Gold." He found something, shiny rocks. Said they were special. Shiny rocks. Special, dot. The hair on the back of Caleb's neck prickled. This was more than just a simple rescue. This was about claims, about greed, about the dark heart that beat beneath the surface of this land. Was he walking into something far more dangerous than he imagined? Was the sheriff not just a man enforcing the law, but also a player in this game? Fort Thomas was likely crawling with men who wanted the same thing, a viper's nest. He couldn't risk the boy there. The river whispers secrets as Caleb built a small fire, the flames casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. The boy huddled close, his humming a soft counterpoint to the crackling wood. Caleb recognized the tune, a mournful ballad about a lost love, a white man's song learned in the heart of Apache territory. Did Mr. Abernathy ever talk about other prospectors? Caleb asked, his voice casual. Anyone else looking for these shiny rocks? The boy shook his head. He said it was a secret. He didn't want anyone to know. Can he reach it before the light dies? A secret worth killing for? Caleb's hand instinctively went to the butt of his rifle. How many men were out there, searching for the same thing? And how far would they go to get it? He had to get this boy from Fort Thomas. It wasn't just about saving a life anymore. It was about protecting a secret, a dangerous secret that could unravel the fragile peace of the Arizona territory. The sun bleeds red again, harsher this time, a brutal reminder of the relentless pursuit. Caleb woke before dawn, the boy still asleep, his small body curled into a tight ball. He doused the fire, scattering the ashes to leave no trace. They had to be moving. Can he reach it before the light dies? He saddled Dusty, his movements swift and efficient. He lifted the boy onto the horse, securing him as best he could. 60 miles felt like 600 now. Every mile was a gamble, every shadow a potential threat. "We're going somewhere safe," Caleb said, correcting himself. "We're going to get you safe." The boy nodded, his eyes filled with a trust that Caleb didn't deserve. He kicked Dusty into motion, urging him onward. The metallic clang of shovel against rock, the distant howl of coyotes, the creaking leather of saddlebags, all blended into a symphony of fear and determination. What was Sheriff Meeks telling the townspeople? Was he painting Caleb as a kidnapper? A thief? Or worse, an Indian sympathizer? And what was the price of failure? Not just for him, but for the boy, for the territory, for the fragile balance of power that held everything together? Saving a life shouldn't be a death sentence, but in Clifton, harboring an Apache child might as well be. The sun bleeds red, painting the canyon walls in hues of fire as Caleb urged his mule, Bess, onward. 60 miles to Fort Thomas, justice, or another kind of death. The creaking leather of saddlebags marked time against the boy's soft humming of a white man's tune, Clementine and Lost Love. Audit. Caleb glanced back. The boy, clinging to his worn jacket, stared straight ahead, dark eyes reflecting the dying light. Not a word since Caleb pulled him from those vigilantes, not even thanks. Just that haunting melody. Can he reach it before the light dies? "You hungry, son?" Caleb asked, voice rough. The boy shook his head, unwavering gaze. He understood English. But why the silence? What secrets hid in those young eyes? Anticipation thickened the air as darkness swallowed the canyon. Shelter was needed. Desert nights were unforgiving, and Sheriff Meeks wouldn't be far behind. Shadows lengthened into pursuing riders. Brush rustled like whispered threats. What if mercy ruins justice? He spotted a shallow cave at the base of a towering mesa. Not ideal, but better than nothing. Dismounting, the metallic clang of his shovel echoed as he cleared a space for a fire. "Gather wood," he instructed, pointing. The boy obeyed silently, movements quick and efficient. Hardship was no stranger. Flames danced, casting flickering shadows. Caleb pulled out dried jerky. This time, the boy accepted, tearing into it with a hunger that belied his denial. Can he reach it before the light dies? "What's your name?" Caleb asked. The boy swallowed, meeting Caleb's eyes. "Thomas," a low, raspy whisper. "Thomas?" A white man's name. "How'd you come by that name, Thomas? Is the price worth the trail ahead?" He hesitated, then looked away. "He gave it to me. The prospector." The prospector. Vanished months ago, whispers of a rich strike. His son? Or something else? Silence screamed. Caleb had to press, but gently. All the boy had now. What if mercy ruins justice? "Tell me about him, Thomas. What was he like?" Thomas stared into the fire, face etched with sadness. "He was kind. He taught me English. Told me stories. Said he'd take me to a big city, where there were buildings taller than mountains. A city. A shattered dream. What if justice kills hope? Caleb sighed. No knight-errant, just a claim jumper with a guilty conscience. But something about this boy, his quiet dignity, touched him. The river whispered secrets as Caleb bedded down, saddle as a pillow. Thomas curled near the fire, eyes fixed on the flames. Sleep would be fitful. Every creak, every howl, sounded like Meeks and his posse who pays if he chooses wrong. How long before they found him? Surrender the boy? Or fight? First light painted the sky pink and gold. Caleb woke with a start, hand reaching for his rifle. Thomas was awake, watching. We need to move, Caleb said, low. They'll be coming. What if justice kills hope? He saddled Bess, movements efficient. Handed Thomas jerky, helped him onto the mule. Hold on tight, he said, meeting the boy's eyes. It's going to be a long ride. As they rode out, Caleb glanced back. The cave looked empty, abandoned. Is the price worth the trail ahead? They rode hard all morning. The sun beat down, turning the desert into a furnace. Dust thickened the air. Creaking leather marked the miles. By midday, they reached a small stream. Caleb dismounted, letting Bess drink. Thomas slid off, sat on the bank, staring at the water. We need to be at Fort Thomas by nightfall, Caleb said, consulting the sun. That's if Meeks doesn't catch up. He realized the supplies were low. Maybe too low to make it who pays if he chooses wrong. He knelt beside Thomas, cupping his hands, offering him a drink. Thomas accepted, eyes still fixed on the water. What will happen to me at the fort? He asked, barely a whisper. Caleb hesitated. He didn't want to lie. They'll take care of you, he said, choosing his words carefully. They'll give you food and shelter. Maybe even an education. Who pays if he chooses wrong? Was that the truth? Or just a lie? What if the army saw him as just another savage? Thomas didn't respond. He just stared at the water, face unreadable. The distant howl of coyotes seemed closer, a mournful lament carried on the wind. The sun bleeds red with each mile, each hour that passes. What if he was wrong about the fort? What if he was leading this boy to his doom? And was he willing to risk everything, his freedom, his future, on the slim chance that he was doing the right thing? Saving a life shouldn't be a death sentence, but in Clifton, harboring an Apache child might as well be. The sun bleeds red, painting the canyon walls in hues of fire and blood. Caleb tightened his grip on the reins, the creaking leather of saddlebags, a familiar comfort against the rising anxiety in his gut. 60 miles to Fort Thomas. 60 miles of unforgiving terrain, and the ever-present threat of Sheriff Meeks and his posse. He glanced back at the boy, Masika, nestled between the supplies, his small face etched with a wisdom that belied his age. The river whispers secrets as they followed its winding path, the cool air a welcome respite from the desert heat. Masika hummed softly, the tune a hauntingly familiar melody, a white man's tune. It was a lullaby Caleb hadn't heard since his own mother passed, and the unexpected sound twisted the knife of guilt already lodged deep within him. Where'd you learn that song, son? Caleb asked, his voice rough. Masika's dark eyes met his. Mr. Abernathy sang it. Before he went away. Abernathy. The name sparked a flicker of recognition. a prospector who'd vanished months ago, leaving behind only whispers and rumors of a rich strike. Could there be a connection? Could this child hold the key to Abernathy's disappearance, and perhaps something far more valuable? The metallic clang of shovel against rock echoed in Caleb's memory, the sound he heard as he first found the boy. The air grows thick with anticipation. He pushed the thought aside. He had more pressing concerns. The sun was sinking fast, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like demons across the landscape. They needed to find shelter, and soon. He spotted a shallow cave tucked into the base of a mesa, a dark maw, promising temporary sanctuary. He dismounted, his joints protesting the long hours in the saddle. He helped Masika down, the boy's touch light and hesitant who pays if he chooses wrong. "We'll make camp here," Caleb said, his voice low. "Just for the night." He gathered firewood, the dry branches snapping easily under his hand. As the flames crackled to life, casting flickering shadows on the cave walls, Caleb felt a sense of unease settle over him. The silence screams louder than gunfire. He scanned the surrounding terrain, his senses on high alert. "Are they coming?" Masika asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Is the price worth the trail ahead?" "Not if I can help it," Caleb replied, forcing a reassuring tone. He knew the boy was more perceptive than he let on. He rationed out some dried meat and water, the meager meal a stark reminder of their dwindling supplies. How long could they keep running? And what would happen when they reached Fort Thomas? Would the authorities believe his story? Or would they see him as nothing more than an accomplice, a kidnapper? As Masika ate, he began to hum again, the same haunting melody. Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that the song held a deeper meaning, a clue to something hidden, something dangerous. What if mercy ruins justice? "Masika," Caleb said, his voice gentle. "Tell me more about Mr. B. I might hide to Naiche. What did he do?" The boy hesitated, his eyes darting nervously around the cave. He showed me things. Shiny rocks. He said they were worth much." Shiny rocks. Gold? Abernathy had found gold, and he'd shared the secret with a child. Was that why he disappeared? Did someone kill him for his claim? And was Masika now a target? The distant howl of coyotes pierced the night, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness. Caleb pulled his rifle closer, his hand resting on the cold steel. He had to protect this boy, not just from Sheriff Meeks, but from anyone who might want to exploit him. He banked the fire, leaving only a small flickering flame to ward off the chill. He wrapped Masika in a blanket and settled down beside him, his back against the rough cave wall. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. He had to stay vigilant. He'd get the boy to Fort Thomas, even if it meant turning himself in to clear the boy's name. But what if Meeks outsmarted him? What if the sheriff had already sent word ahead to Fort Thomas, painting him as a fugitive? Would they even give him a chance to explain? The hours crawled by, each tick of the unseen clock a hammer blow against Caleb's resolve. The moon climbed high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The air grew thick with anticipation, heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Just before her first light, Masika stirred, his small hand reaching out to grip Caleb's arm. "They're coming," he whispered, his voice filled with fear. "I hear them." Caleb was instantly awake, his senses on high alert. He strained his ears, listening for any sign of pursuit. At first, he heard nothing but the rustling of leaves and the chirping of crickets. But then, he heard it. The faint but unmistakable sound of horses' hooves, growing closer with each passing moment. What if justice kills hope? He grabbed his rifle, his heart pounding in his chest. They were out of time. He had to make a choice. Stand and fight, or run and risk leading them straight to Fort Thomas. But what if standing and fighting meant certain death for both of them? What if running meant abandoning any hope of clearing his name? "We have to go," Caleb said, his voice urgent. He helped Masika to his feet, and together they slipped out of the cave, melting into the shadows. They moved quickly, silently, their every step guided by the pale moonlight. He knew they couldn't outrun the horses, not for long. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. The river whispers secrets, leading them onward. He spotted a narrow crevice in the canyon wall, barely wide enough to squeeze through. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. Is the price worth the trail ahead? "In here," Caleb whispered, pushing Masika towards the opening. "Hurry." They squeezed through the crevice, the rough rock scraping against their skin. The passage twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the canyon. He could hear the posse closing in, their voices growing louder, more menacing. Can he reach it before the light dies? Were they walking into a trap? Or was there a way out?